This illustration taken out of the BMS manual shows all possible steer points within the navigation system. And it's important to understand that there's different blocks for specific steer points. Let's take, for example, the first block, steer points 1 through 24 up at the top. Those are your more commonly used steer points that you use for your flight plan. In other words, you wouldn't have a flight plan that has more than 24 steer points. But for the purpose of this video, we're going to be focusing on two specific blocks. The first one is 26 through 30, your own ship mark points, as well as 71 through 80, the flexible data link steer points. Now for the first block, steer points 26 through 30, these steer points are basically your own. These are going to be the steer point numbers that pop up whenever you set mark points down on the ground. Now at first glance it looks like you only have 5 steer points to use for your mark points. Well, that's true, but it's not. The first mark point that you set out is going to be steer point number 26. If you set out another mark point, it's going to be steer point number 27, so on and so forth. Once you get to 30, if you set out an additional mark point, it's going to revert back and overwrite 26. So while you have a pool of only 5 steer point numbers to play with for your mark points, you're not limited to just 5. Now for the second block, steer points 71 through 80, these are going to be the steer points that are sent to you over the data link. So whether it be a mark point from another plane or a steer point from another flight within the same package, the numbers are going to be the same. It's always going to start at 71 when it's sent to you over the data link. So that's a key note to remember. If you have somebody in your flight who has set up a mark point and their mark point steer point number is 26 and they send that mark point to you over the data link, it is not going to be 26 for you. 26 for you is your own ship, your own 5 steer point pool. It's going to be sent to you as 70. Well, the first number is going to be 71. And the same goes the other way around. If you have a mark point that is steer point 26 and you send it over the data link to your wingman, he is not going to see it as steer point 26. He is going to see it within the 71 through 80 realm. So in a nutshell, a mark point is really just a steer point with a little bonus. We're going to get to that in a second, but it's a steer point that falls within steer point numbers 26 through 30. So when you hear somebody say mark point, that's the block of numbers that they're referring to. Here we're going to talk about the 4 different mark point modes. We're not going to get into detail yet with the 4 different modes. This is just to get familiar with the mark point DED page. To access it on the DED, we're going to push mark, which is 7 on the ICP. After making sure that our CNI page is up, we push 7, and the mode that we're in right now is HUD. Now earlier in the video we discussed steer point numbers, and this right here shows you, this is where you'll look to see what steer number, or as it's displayed here, mark point number that you're currently going to be setting. Now of course you have the grid. It's not, obviously it's not entered yet, it's all zeros, so but that's where you're going to be looking for that stuff. We push sequence again, and the next mode is TGP. Again is OFLY, that deals with air-to-air master mode. And we go to FCR, we're going to do a little bit of work with the ground radar. Sequence again, and that's going to cycle us back to the first. Now we can, as we just did, cycle through all 4 of them, pushing the sequence on the DCD, but you can also cycle by pushing keys 1 through 9 on the ICP. Okay, the first mode that we're going to be talking about is the FCR mode. Now, a quick word about conditions. These conditions, these steps that we're going to be going through, are conditions that are necessary to get the mark page mode set automatically. This does not automatically enter in the coordinates. A little bit of inconsistency, the BMS manual on page 42, if you want to follow along, lists the 4 different modes and the conditions for each. They're actually wrong, and they know about it. If you follow along the BMS-1 by Red Dog on page 64, it also lists the 4 different modes and the conditions. The -1 is correct. Okay, it doesn't automatic. There's only one mode that automatically enters, and that's OFLY. We'll be getting to that one here shortly. But just whenever you push mark, it doesn't automatically just magically. It only does that with one mode. Okay, the rest we have to, well, you'll see. Okay, the conditions for FCR mode is you have to be in either nav or air to ground, and as you can see, we are already in air to ground. The second condition is the FCR has to be in GM, which as you can see it is. Third condition is the FCR has to be sensor of interest. The white outline shows that. And lastly, the FCR needs to be designating something. So let's go ahead and move up here, TMS up to lock it up. Now we have a location. Now once we're done with this, for the FCR, what this is going to do is it's going to put a mark point right in that spot. Now we have all our 4 conditions met, so we hit mark. Well, first we make sure that the CNI page is up, then we hit mark, and you'll see that the mode is automatically set. The coordinates are not. Okay. And another side note, yes, the first mark point is 26. As discussed before, this is 28. Just ignore this. I had to do a few takes. Hey, what are you going to do? Okay, so these are all zeroed out. In order to get this mark point entered, you TMS up, and there we are. Those are entered. If you go into your steer point 28, it's going to point you right to that spot right there. Now, if we go to our HSD, make that soy, see that blue X? That is our mark point. So in addition to a steer point, it adds a little visual cue, a little visual reference on the HSD where that mark point is. And that is it for FCR. The next mark point mode we're going to be discussing is TGP. So similar to FCR, we need to be in either nav or air to ground mode, which you can see we are in air to ground mode. The TGP needs to be in air to ground mode. So let's pull up our TGP, air to ground mode, and there we go. The TGP needs to be the sensor of interest, so we'll DMS down and make that sensor of interest. And lastly, the TGP needs to be ground stabilized, so we'll TMS up once to ground stabilize. Now that all our conditions are met, and make sure that the CNI page is up, we hit mark, and automatically TGP mode is set. As expected, we TMS up one more time, and there's our grid. So wherever the TGP, after all the conditions are met, where the TGP is pointing, that's where our mark point is going to be. Let's look on our HSD. Yep, and there it is right there. And that is it for TGP. We just got through discussing the FCR and the TGP and the conditions needed to be established in order to have the mark page automatically set up for those respective modes. Now, when those conditions for the FCR and TGP are not met, the result is the mark point HUD mode. Now, like the FCR and the TGP, what's required is you need to be either in nav master mode or air to ground master mode. In this case, I'm using nav for a clean HUD. As a matter of fact, I'm going to clean it up just a little bit more here. There we go. Now, basically with this, focus primarily on the flight path marker. Now I am going to push mark, and you'll notice that the mode we're in is HUD. And unpausing. Now you'll notice on the flight path marker there is a circle and a dot in it. I'm moving it down. That guy right there. Now what that's called is a HUD marking queue, or HMC. And basically what that has, or the HMC operates in two different states, a pre-designate and a post-designate. What you're looking at right now is a pre-designate. So, and it kind of acts like a bore sight. So if I turn the plane, you'll notice it turns with me. Kind of follows it around. Now to enter it into a post-designate, I basically ground stabilize it by pushing TMS up. And there it goes. Okay, now it doesn't follow the plane. Now, while in post-designate, I can use my cursor and move it around, and it'll do fine adjustments. And you can set it on the location that you want to set up your mark point. Now, if I TMS down, it's going to reset it back on my flight path marker. Now, and while it's on the flight path marker, when it's reset on the flight path marker, it resets it back to a pre-designate status. So, and we're going to put it up to the sky, and I am pushing TMS up, and you notice that it doesn't do anything. Okay, it has to be the surface of the Earth. Okay, so again, it's acting like a bore sight, so it's in a pre-designate status. I go and I place it on, let's see, it looks like a building. Okay, now it's in post-designate. Ground stabilized. I move it to that dark spot. Now on the DED, I push TMS up a second time, and there we go. There's our grid. So that is now our well, let's look at this. That is now our mark point right there. And that is it for the HUD mode. The fourth and last mark point mode we're going to be discussing is OFLY. And the only requirement for an OFLY mode is you be in air-to-air master mode. And that's set. So let me unpause this. So you have you overfly something that you want to put a mark point on. And the main difference, this was discussed earlier, the main difference is once you push that mark point, it's going to automatically enter the coordinates of the location of the plane when you push that button. So we push mark, OFLY mode, the grid is already in there, and we are flying over that mark point. See it kind of coming behind us, and there it is. That is it for OFLY. Alright, and another thing to point out concerning mark points, and we're going to use OFLY as an example. There's an area out here to the right where I saw some baddies, so I flew over them and I did an OFLY mark point on them. Now, right now, my airplane is referencing steer point 3. So I want to get, quickly, I want to get my nose pointed to where they're at, I guess before I run out of fuel. So instead of going, return, steer point, 26, enter, return, a whole bunch of key, I don't have to do all that. Right now, tadpole is pointing towards steer point 3. I have this active. I push M-SEL, the 0 on the ICP, push that, and it automatically, tadpole is off to the right, and now it's pointing me to that steer point. Mark point is 26, and now my airplane is referencing 26. That's it.